Good afternoon. It's a pleasure welcoming Dr. Mustafa Cenap Aydin for a session on preventing extremism through interreligious dialogue, a European perspective. Mustafa Cenap Aydin is a co-founder and the director of Istituto Tevere, a center for interreligious studies. He is also the academic coordinator at the International Institute Jacques Maritain, a center for studies on human rights, democracy, and civil society. He was born and raised in Istanbul, where he got his first degree in sociology and political science at Bogazici University, Istanbul. Since 2004, he has been living in Rome. He studied at the Pontifical Gregorian University, Vatican, in the fields of Christian theology, interfaith studies, Jewish-Christian relations, Asian religions, and law and religion at the PhD program of LUMSA University in Rome. Furthermore, he completed a master's degree in third sector management, specializing in diversity and inclusion at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas, Vatican. You're welcome, Dr. Aydin, and you have up to 2 hours for this session, and you're welcome to conduct it however you like to. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind invitation, and I'm very happy to be with you again in this course of India dialogue. For me, actually, it's a process of learning. I would like to today really learn from you a lot, because it is a country, unfortunately, I have never been, but living in Rome, I have met so many people from India in the last 16 years, so from different parts of India, from different traditions, and I live in a neighborhood in Rome, which is very close to a Hindu temple. So I mean, all the time when I just engage people from India, it's a pleasure to learn more and more. And today we will focus actually on a subject which is related to a project that I sent you. Website maybe was not very clear for you, but I will help you out for some parts of it. We will just learn together about the project, because the idea of today is how can we approach to interreligious dialogue, in terms of this project, because how is it possible to combat extremism through interreligious interfaith dialogue? Yes, let's start with our definitions, with what we actually mean by dialogue, interreligious and interfaith dialogue. I mean, it will be a little bit a European, and in my case, also the Roman perspective. I will explain soon what I mean with, by European and the Roman perspective, because we have to also always, since as far as I understand, most of you are dealing with social sciences or just doing this formation, it is also necessary to have at least a general idea what we understand while we are discussing the basic concepts. Here the idea is whether we are trying to develop about common sense about interfaith interreligious dialogue. Of course, in each geography, in each context, social, cultural, national context, we have sometimes a different connotation of the concept. It depends also on the root of the concept, but on the other hand, also how do we use the adjectives, to differentiate different types of dialogue. I will tackle with this issue a little bit, and then we'll move to the subject of today. As you are very familiar, I'm sure, since you are here, dialogue is a concept that we are currently using in the last 5 or 6 decades very commonly. It is a very historical term, of course. Being a Greek term, we can find it in the ancient Greek texts, dialogos, and very famous philosophers of ancient Greek time used it as a method to discuss some important issues, to discuss, about universe, about existence. And it is a method, if you just, use the word is logos, to understand some complex issues. But what we mean today is something, developed in the last 5 or 6 decades, I would say, because it is also related to this city where I'm living in Rome, because uh, one of the main, I would say, figures, international figures of interreligious, interfaith dialogue, the Catholic Church, uh, made an interesting, step forward in terms of its relation with other religions. And that resulted the promotion of term inter-religious dialogue. We don't have too much time to get into that, but it is the date of 1965 when the Catholic Church, at the end of the Second Vatican Council, published a document we call it Declaration Nostra Aetate in our times, in which Catholic Church explained its relation with four main religions around the world: Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And through this document, they promoted the idea of inter-religious dialogue, being Catholic Church one of the interlocutors and actors of this dialogue, but also putting itself into a conversation, and that's the logos, with people who belong to different religions, as I mentioned, there's four world religions around the world. And this term is appropriated by different religious communities: Christian and non, Jewish and non, Muslim and non, Hindu and non. And sometimes, it is used not only just, to explain the interactions between believers or members of different communities, but sometimes also it's used just, effort to understand the relations in general among different religions, because it's not only happening as a dichotomy, because there are several levels of dialogue. Sometimes people belonging to different religions, they put them in dialogue, just could be a Muslim Christian dialogue, a Hindu Muslim dialogue, Jewish Muslim dialogue, but also in multiple stakeholders could join into a dialogue, and then that dialogue has a different, of course, method. And also whenever the people who belong to different religions engage in this dialogue, they have a different approach from I would say bilateral dialogue, as I mentioned the examples before. And let me focus on a little bit, the differentiation between the two adjectives. I intentionally use them interchangeably. Sometimes I say, or together I said, interreligious and sometimes interfaith. Usually in Latin languages that I'm more engaging, Italian, French, and also German, even though it's a Germanic language. In German language also we have the interreligious, interreligious. It makes a connotation, up just, focusing on the religio, the term, the Latin term. Sometimes we use like a binding together, or sometimes it makes a reference, to put together. It underlines the communitarian aspect of religious positions, communitarian aspect of world religions, because when we use the term religio, we do actually need people who identify themselves with a specific religious community. And that's why in interreligious dialogue meetings, discussions, interactions, sometimes the stakeholders should clarify this point, say, no, not the religions are dialoguing. Religions are abstract terms. How is it possible that they can just dialogue? But they say people who belong to some religious communities, or people who identify themselves as believers of specific religions, they engage into dialogue, as we call interreligious dialogue. But in English language, we have another term, which again, originates from Latin, from fides. Fides is the term, Latin term for faith. And in that sense, then interfaith. I hear very lovely music, but maybe we can just hear it afterwards. And interfaith means, and again, interaction, a communication, a meeting happening between people who identify themselves with a faith. Because that now, with this term, we have a more specifically, defined personal sphere. Of course, faiths are not, independent from the community aspect. In order to, learn about your faith, in order to live your faith in a sacred context, you of course need to always interact people of your faith, of your religion. It doesn't, put you in a position, an isolated position, that your faith is totally, detached from the religious community. But when we use this both terms, sometimes interchangeably, sometimes we have to underline this, connotation. Whenever talk about interfaith, we do need actually again underline that the possible confusion that some people think that interreligious dialogue could mean religions as abstract terms or as sociological definitions, could dialogue. And that is just that I would like to say. And what's really going on? There are several spheres in which we try to define interreligious interfaith dialogue. Sometimes a very daily practice. Whenever you meet someone living in your building, and then just greeting each other, sharing food each other, and that we call in the literature of dialogue studies as dialogue life. Not necessarily also we should put the adjectives like interfaith, interreligious, and intercultural. I haven't really touched upon that. That's another subject. We can just also talk about it briefly. What's going on is basically, as a human person, identifying himself or herself with a religion, with a culture, with a faith, or with an ideology, you are exposing yourself in daily practices to people who have different identifications from you, or sometimes very similar ones, but still with a very personal assessment of that. And that's happening usually when people who identify themselves with a general idea of a religion, and just literally you can think that they belong to the same religion, or some that they belong to the same religious community or same religious denomination, but since each person has a different experience of life, experience of family, experience of all his or her, life trajectory related to his or her education and the tastes, etc., lifestyle, then again we have another sphere in this dialogue, and we call it intra or intra-faith or intra-religious dialogue. What's happening? Literally, all these people could be Muslims, they identified as Muslims, or they identified as Jewish, but then their interaction is also another subject to be studied, because they have still theological, ideological, cultural differences, and these differences are also to be discovered in order to build up healthy relations among people who belong to different tastes or styles within a religious community. And most of the time, this dialogue is more difficult than interreligious and interfaith dialogue, because in that case, different stakeholders of this dialogue have the claims, usually just sometimes like possessing the truth or knowing and practicing that religion better than others, etc., etc. So they are the common obstacles of this intra-faith, intra-religious dialogue. But back to again some of these basic categories. There's dialogue of life I mentioned. Another sphere, another categorization that we can talk about interreligious interfaith dialogue. That is a dialogue of the spiritual dialogue. And that dialogue, we just focus on the context in which people who identify themselves with religions which has a deep spiritual experience and tradition, and they come together to share moments of prayer, meditation, and contemplation. For instance, I don't want to stay too much on this theoretical level. First, you can check it. It's a DIM. DIM. It's a dialogue intermonastique or dialogue intermonastico, French, Italian. It's an intermonastic dialogue. Maybe, I don't know, have you heard of it before? It started with Christian, especially Catholic, Orthodox communities who have a long tradition of monastic and contemplative life, with Hindu and Buddhist communities, and they have also very long and historical tradition of monasticism and the ascetic life which is attached to the spirituality of these religions. And then also Muslims and some Jewish people, because even though the monastic life is not I would say very visible characteristics of Islam and Judaism, but in those religions also there are several religious communities, confraternities, both in Islam and Judaism, who have a deep spiritual tradition, and which are also related historically to Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. Let me give an example. For instance, from your region, the famous Muslim confraternity Naqshbandiya has a very important inculturation in the Indian and the culture, and that's why in their religious spiritual practices, you can just observe this effect on their spiritual life. Even another one, the Kalenderi tradition, another confraternity, which does not exist anymore, but you can just look it up in different textbooks. I just remember one of them is like God's Unruly Friends, in which not only the author, I guess Kara Mustafa, he doesn't talk only the Kalenderism and some other communities, which are not considered very orthodox, but these communities have a spiritual practice very much related to Buddhist and Hindu traditions. And, this spiritual dialogue could appear and occur in different contexts. It could be just, Muslims and Christians come together in a church, for peace prayer. Could be another one, let me give an example what is going on, for instance, in Rome for many years. Could be just also a moment of silence. I mean, here in Rome, first in a monastery, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Baha'is, several Taoists, they come together every month once for a prayer wish. Just, maybe some people who are in trouble in different parts of the world, could be some, other questions that we would like to resolve as part of the human fraternity, the human family. And the thing is, after pronouncing, the wish publicly, and these people in a silent room with just some candles only, they remain in silence like 30 minutes or so. Everyone just prays in silence, and then they share the deepness, the profound experience of this spiritual moment. So I mean, there are several examples that we can just give, but I just make it short here. Another example of interreligious dialogue, another category, we can call it the theological dialogue. For this theological dialogue, as I just mentioned, also for the monastic dialogue, we need people who has not only knowledge but an experience of spirituality. But for the theological dialogue, there is a requirement that the stakeholders, the counterparts of this dialogue, should be persons who do not only are knowledgeable of their respective theologies, but they should also have a minimum knowledge of the theologies of their counterparts or their friends and fellows in dialogue. And that usually focuses on an idea of how to assess some basic concepts in religious traditions. Could be directly theological concepts, but also some concepts which are related to practice of religious life. And last but not the least, another level, not just it's in a hierarchy, another level, another category of dialogue. Usually it's called as like an advanced level, not a hierarchy, but just sometimes people ask, oh, what is next in dialogue? We just initiate to talk, we just try to understand each other, visit each other, share some food, make greetings in our respective festivities, and we come together in spiritual moments. And what is next? That's a very good question, I guess, and usually I get this question. And usually what's happening is a dialogue of solidarity and common work. What does it mean? People who belong to different religions and cultures, traditions, whatever, they come together inspired by their respective sacred scripture, by their traditions, but focusing on common projects. It could be a common project of solidarity for their neighborhood, to focus on how to raise awareness about environment. But we are talking about concrete projects, not only organizing a meeting or prayer or conference about that, but how people who belong to different cultures, religions, faiths could join their forces. And what is the difference? Because everyone could do that. Every active citizen, just who is aware of what's really going on in civil society. But what would the difference? Just put it in the categories of interreligious, interfaith dialogue. Here we see as something, I would say, an added clotted cream on our lovely dish and the cake, which is their deeply spiritual motivation to do that. I mean, most of the time in civil society organizations or some NGO activities, at the beginning people are very enthusiastic. They would like to do, they would like to resolve. But most of the time there are several problems about just people losing their motivation, or actually could not involve many people as they expect at the beginning. So here, people who are motivated by their spiritual traditions could play a very important role, not only just raising awareness, but since religions, if someone has a religious sensitivity and just related to his or her faith in a serious manner, and that affects their lifestyle. So just especially for in these days, you can just see everywhere now Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian, Muslim, Jewish experts who are promoting more and more how should be more caring about nature, about our fellow human beings, especially how to prevent war and conflict. Okay, just finishing with that, preventing war and conflict. Also, the project that I tried to share with you with its official website, and extremely united projects. I will briefly talk about it, introduce you to. But till now, if you have any questions, please do ask your questions now before I leave this part, introductory part about some definitions, and then I will start with extremely united. And then you can also ask questions afterwards to this part, but just for to give you some space about this part.
Pragya wants to ask a question. Pragya?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that, is there also, I don't know if that is a valid thing, because dialogue is usually between two people, but is there also, when people are sort of trying to discover their, spirituality, or in general, questioning their own religion, they have this back and forth with their own self? So does that fall into some kind of a dialogue, like within yourself, or is that like just, is that not considered per se?
No, it's a very, very good question. I mean, if you look at the, I didn't, cover them today, but if you look at the, as we call them as the philosophers who actually are considered the who put the theoretical foundations of interreligious interfaith dialogue, like Emmanuel Levinas or Martin Buber, the philosophers. Martin Buber is an Austrian Jew, Emmanuel Levinas also a French Jew. Each moment of dialogue starts, of course, a dialogue with ourselves. And any moment of dialogue could be in community, but could be just a bilateral, it's happening two persons. First of all, it is a pilgrimage. It's a journey to discover ourselves, because now, since we are trying to focusing on a much more specific topic, but whenever we meet a person, this is also the old definitions of Buber and Levinas. Whenever meet a person, whenever see the face of this person, actually that moment, that meeting between two human persons, at the beginning of to discover ourselves as human persons, because this human person, independent from his faith or nationality or background, is another human fellow helping me to mirror myself. I'm trying to understand who am I, and each moment of interdialogue, interreligious dialogue, interfaith dialogue, of course, journey to understand myself, and just also not, I just give an example because they put it more theoretically, but of course, the Oriental philosophies and religions are very rich in terms of this. And usually what I see is whenever religions, Middle Eastern religions like Judaism, Christian, Islam, whenever they put themselves in dialogue with Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, it's a huge learning process for them. And most of the time I see religious communities of Abrahamic religions who do apply methods and techniques of Hinduism and Buddhism in order to promote also the religious education within the community. Yeah, thank you. There's another question and also a written question, I guess.
Yes, so Rokia raised the hand first, so maybe we can take him.
So thank you for your introduction to dialogue and different kinds of dialogues that you have enumerated. My question is situated on the genesis, the beginning of the interreligious dialogue. As you said, after the Second Vatican Council, the Catholic Church insisted upon the interreligious dialogue. Now, I would like to know the necessity of this mission of interreligious dialogue. What was the necessity? That's my first question. Second question is on the dialogue of solidarity and Commonwealth. I had a possibility of working with a few French and Spaniards, and we mostly worked upon some charitable works, and they're happy to be associated on the charitable works than any religious movements. Since we talk about religious dialogue, so this kind of attitude of people in Europe, does it mean that they really forego religion in the dialogue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first question, yes, it has a specific history of the Nostra Aetate declaration and its whole promotion of interreligious dialogue. It has different roots, but I will just give you the most important ones. First of all, Nostra Aetate was a response of the Catholic Church for the Holocaust, for Shoah. Because after this terrible tragedy happened in Europe, the 6 million Jewish people killed in the heart of Europe, by Nazi regime. And there was a huge question whether the Catholic Church responded, to this tragedy enough, and then just, and there was a whole idea of reconciliation with the Jewish community, because as you know, till the Second Vatican Council, unfortunately, there were several problems between Catholic Church and the Jewish people, and most of the time these problems were very much related to some idea of anti-Semitism, even though Jesus Christ, Virgin Mary, and all apostles were Jewish. And that's also something Catholic Church reaffirmed in the Second Vatican Council. But when idea of Nostra Aetate started, that the Catholic Church, the bishops of the Church Fathers, Council Fathers, they not Church Fathers, Council Fathers started, giving this idea, especially that was idea of the Pope John XXIII, who was the promoter of the Second Vatican Council, and there are several other bishops who are coming from Middle East, from India, from Asian countries. They said, okay, this is a lovely idea, but if we would like to, produce a document to promote this dialogue between Christians and Jews, we should also consider other world religions. So Nostra Aetate became what we know today as Nostra Aetate. But please don't, we shouldn't be forgetting something about Nostra Aetate and the whole idea, because at that time, John XXIII died and the Paul VI elected as Pope. He is the Pope, he was the Pope who signed this document of 28th of October 1965. If you go to the website of Vatican, you can see this document with his signature. But it is the Second Vatican Council seems to a beginning, yes, of course, but also it is a result of a process. This idea of interfaith dialogue became something official and to be implemented, by part of the Catholic Church. But it doesn't mean that this idea of dialogue or dialogue experiences never happened in the church. As you know, 2 years ago, especially Christians and Muslims, but all people of goodwill who are engaging with dialogue, they celebrated 800th anniversary of meeting between St. Francis and the Sultan of Egypt. And that happened in 1219. And several other occasions, of course, there were, wars, conflicts, but, if you change our approach and if you look at the history from a different perspective, there were also several moments of peaceful coexistence and interreligious interaction in the history. But especially for the 20th century, what was the preparation for Second Vatican Council? At the end of the 19th century, but at the beginning of the 20th century, also several other Catholic thinkers, and some of them priests, but some of them was a layman, they demonstrated a deep interest in different religions. I just mentioned only one of them, which is very commonly known. Louis Massignon, for instance. Louis Massignon is he was a French Orientalist teaching in Paris University for many years. Massignon had a great interest in studying Islam, and many decades before the Second Vatican Council, he proposed the idea to reinvent the concept of Abrahamic religions, for instance. You know, he tried to put Catholic Church into dialogue because he was a practicing Catholic. He tried to put the Catholic Church into dialogue, academic dialogue. I don't just mention it's not on the theological, but academic dialogue, just to learn the languages, to understand what does it really, how Muslims or Jews define themselves. And this is, but there are also several subsequent documents related to Nostra Aetate, but I just limit myself. You know, this is the genesis and the birth of the Nostra Aetate. And the second question, I'm not sure whether I just got the point very well, but it was just, you know, could you read, because I hope that I understand, but I don't want to just, you know, give you a you know, wrong answer.
It's regarding dialogue of solidarity and Commonwealth.
Okay.
I said I had a possibility of working along with French and Spanish people. We did a lot of charitable works, but when it comes to the matter of religion, they are really hesitant. So when we talk about interreligious dialogue, certainly faith element is there, but they are more drawn towards charitable works on the basis of humanity or humanitarian elements than religious element. So does it mean that they really forego the religious dimension in the dialogue of solidarity and Commonwealth? That was my question.
Okay, no, that was very good. I thought it was like that, but just I would like to be sure about it. Okay, this is I think another level of dialogue we should discover. You know, religion as such is you know, has become recently, the last 3 decades, again, an important topic to be studied in the social sciences. And their response, you know, to avoid any idea of, or any label which is religious, is related to the secularization happening in European context. Because in the European context, even though most of the people are still registered as church members, and there is a huge visibility of different religions in terms of churches, temples, etc. You know, the secularization process, even though most of the, for instance, at the end of 19th century and till mid of the 20th century, mid of the last century, most of the sociologists of religion predicted that religion will be totally replaced by an idea of rationalization, for instance, rationalization of everything, avoiding all sorts of metaphysical and spiritual explanations to life. But it never happened. And that's why some sociologists call it desecularization. But I have to underline something about these 2 processes. I think it's very related, the response of your colleagues from Europe. Because desecularization is a good observation, and I'm as a sociologist, I agree and observe that. But whenever I approach the desecularization, I would like to underline something very crucial. Desecularization could not, or stop the secularization process. They are going hand in hand. It's not just anymore, just you have, okay, now secularization and religion losing more and more her place in the society, and now it's reversed. It's not really reverse. On the one hand, yes, religion came back. Like, just there are several books on that. You know, starting especially at the 90s, Peter Berger and Gilles Kepel, Olivier Roy. You can just check these people. And these researchers, these sociologists, political scientists, observed, but they warned us about something. The religion which came back, it's not anymore the religion we used to observe in 19th century or even at the beginning of 20th century. Most of the time, it remains in the private sphere in the European context. It's not very appreciated, if you talk about religion in the public sphere directly, because it has sometimes negative connotations in terms of people think that maybe the person who is talking about his or her faith is directly engaging as sort of a missionary or proselytism work. Or some people tend to define religion, especially in this social work and solidarity work, something divisive, because each one has his or her own religious faith. And as you know, not all theologies in every religion, embrace diversity as we can expect in the public sphere. But I think this is an ongoing process. It's not just very crystal clear, because we cannot just claim, yes, on the one hand, social workers, they would like to create the so-called a neutral space in which maybe human persons could appear more and more with more universalizing and I will say a neutral identities. But of course, we can also discuss from this perspective, each human person is not only made up, by social ideas or cultural aspects. That person has also a religious sphere, even though sometimes he or she doesn't believe. He or she has something to say about religion. That is a challenge for the European context, but I think their dialogue with the Asian countries, especially with African countries, will produce more and more a new sphere in which we can discuss again the very role of religion and also in the charity and the solidarity work.
There's a written question by Unes. Do I read it for you?
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like interreligious, like how it turns more to interreligious. Okay. Yes, very good question. I just briefly said that, and okay. The problem about interreligious dialogue is because whenever we talk about interreligious dialogue, people who engage in interreligious dialogue, they have more or less an idea of, sometimes with prejudices, but sometimes with less prejudices, an idea of other. Okay, a Muslim engaged with a Hindu or with a Christian or with Jewish person, and they have an idea of that person, but also they know the problems that they can occur, and most of the time they admit their ignorance about that, saying that, okay, I don't know enough about Hinduism or Judaism, so this dialogue will enable me to learn more about this religion and people who belong to this religion. And they are more prudent and more careful whenever they engage in an interaction with people who belong to different religions. But on the other hand, when we talk about intra-religious, intra-faith dialogue, we have some false, I will say, perceptions of people who belong to our religious community. Because in each, for instance, let me give an example from Islam. Of course, Islamic religion has basic points, like Muslims do share the same sacred scripture, the same tradition of Sunnah, Hadith. Or let me give an example from Catholic Church. There is the Magisterium, Second Vatican Council, whatever say the Pope. Okay, there are common points. But then in each context, social, cultural, geographic context, people do live and do experience this religion with their own cultural and social baggage. And what does it mean? There are some differences, and they are very normal and natural. I just make a reference to a famous document of February 2019, co-written by Pope Francis and Ahmed El-Tayyib, the Imam of Al-Azhar University. In that document, Human Fraternity, or Abu Dhabi document, the both religious leaders affirm that it is actually divine will, the pluralism among people, among human persons. What does it mean? This pluralism does not only between Christians and Muslims or Jews and Hindus, but within also the religious communities. Whenever the difference or diversity comes from your fellow in the same religious community, it could create more barriers, because sometimes they could not reach to find a common language. Maybe they use the same words, but they don't know how to load the same words. Could be also a language differences. But there are also very basic specific problems. I can just touch upon that. Whenever, for instance, especially happening, I'm not just now going into whole religious traditions, but in each religious tradition, as you know, we call it's like for Christian, or I'm not using this Orthodox term for Christians whose head is Patriarch of Constantinople, or Orthodox Jews. I use the term as a generical term, or like a mainstream. In each religious tradition, there are mainstream communities. They claim they are the Orthodox of this community. And whenever a smaller community, due to their theological or due to their cultural differences, they would like to practice their religion, keeping the roots, the same roots, or keeping the same symbols, but they would like to give a different taste. And then we usually have the main problem about intra-religious dialogue, because I know examples in which Muslims who can engage in inter-religious dialogue with different religions and all kinds of religions, but whenever you invite some Muslims to a dialogue table in which there are some other Muslims who are not considered orthodox by them, I don't use the term heterodox, but if they don't see these Muslims are enough, loyal to the tradition as they have claimed, you can have several problems. Even it's very difficult to put them into the same room and around the same table. And that's why, we didn't really, I can just give you examples from Jewish, Hindu, and Buddhist tradition too, because here, for instance, in Italy, all these religions, as I mentioned, are minority religions. Even within the minority groups, maybe you could imagine, oh, they are a minority, and then just maybe, they are more in solidarity. But on the contrary, even though they are a minority, you can find several conflicts and problems within these communities. This is part of actually the dialogue activities. I'm not just problematizing that. This is a part of the human nature. And whenever we, talk about interreligious dialogue, in 5 minutes, I will start. Interreligious dialogue or intra-religious dialogue, a dialogue in general, as an important method to overcome these conflicts in the society, within the religious communities, and between the religious communities. Okay, if we don't have further questions, I will shortly start, to explain the project concretely, because we needed that, because otherwise I could not really explain you what we are trying to do here in the middle of Europe in the last 2 years. Okay, this is a project, as you have seen maybe in the website, called Extremely E-United. Okay, it's not United, E-United, because it's a project funded by European Union. I'm sure you are aware of the European Union. It's a political entity. Some people call it multinational or transnational. It's better to say transnational. I'm not only the one from the European Union. I see also Furkan. He's also from the European Union, from Slovenia. But please don't mix up the European Union with European context, because the project is funded by European Union, and the project but is not only happening or is not only focusing on the European Union countries. But let me give an example. I'm sure since from India, maybe you are more familiar with the recent case of Brexit. For instance, historically, Britain is part of Europe for several social, cultural reasons, but it's not anymore part of the European Union. Even though there are several countries in Europe, like Norway or Switzerland, or maybe you have heard its name, a small, tiny country in the middle of Italy, San Marino, Republic of San Marino. It's not part of the European Union, even though it is located in the heart of the European continent. So the project is funded by this transnational organization, more specifically European Commission, like the government of the transnational political entity of European Union, but it is focusing on the Europe as general. But in our case, the countries which are engaged actually are more responsible. This project was a proposal made at the beginning of 2019, especially brought together different stakeholders. A very important historical university, Leuven, it's a university in Belgium, very close to Brussels, the Catholic University of Leuven, and different organizations who have been very active in interreligious, interfaith dialogue for some of them for decades, at least for the last decade. And countries involved are Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, France, Hungary, Kosovo, Sweden, and Estonia. As you have heard, for instance, there's one country which is in Europe, but which is not in the European Union, like Kosovo. Kosovo is a small, tiny country, between Serbia and Northern Republic of Macedonia. This is the last official name. We have to be careful about the name of this country. Finally, they have agreed about the name. So I would like to say, since everything recorded, I would like to be politically correct about their name. And these countries are, I'm in the part of the Italian part, since I'm the director of the center called Istituto Tevere, Tevere Institute. This center has been engaging in dialogue activities since 2007, since its foundation. We are also part of this project. In this project, what we have actually asked, to our partners, and especially prepared this proposal, how can we actually help out to a important problem, to resolve an important problem in Europe, and that is the radicalization and the spread of extremisms. Okay, here I didn't, at the beginning, for my definitions, I didn't, give time for that because I would like to just talk about it now. Because here we are not only talking about a general idea of radicalization or extremism, but always with plural. Because in our fieldworks, we have discovered, especially with the help of the Leuven University, but also with other researchers and sociologists and political scientists, psychologists, who really helped us to understand better the problem. There are different forms of extremism and radicalization in the European societies. It's not just usually the media or the newspapers just usually try to convince us, there is only religious or more specifically an Islamic kind of radical extremism. But in our field where we have discovered so many other radicalizations. And in our work also we discovered that extremisms, even though they look like fighting each other, they are helping each other in an asymmetric way. Whenever the far-right extremisms, far-right radicals try to, attack Muslim communities in the European context, within this Muslim context, young people are encouraged by this attack to go to extremist movements. And when they become active in the extremist or radical movements, the violent acts of these young people enforces the far-right extremists in the political sphere, because they give the necessary facts how to, prevent the presence of Muslim minorities in Europe. Vice versa. I mean, there are several examples of that. And in this project, we try to produce materials for social media and organize meetings. Now we are approaching to the end of the meeting, end of the project, and we met people from different religious and cultural and social backgrounds in these different countries. And we have different campaigns. And let me talk about these campaigns briefly to you, because they're important. Our campaigns are extremely creative, extremely tolerant, extremely inclusive, extremely critical, extremely informed, and extremely ethical. Okay, these campaigns are dedicated to different goals. And if I just start to talk about each of them, we don't have time, because I would like to really hear your opinion, hear your feedback about that. I will briefly talk about two of them: extremely informed and extremely critical. Maybe you have already, as extremely aware, sorry, the end of and extremely aware, that was the last one, the seventh one. Extremely critical and extremely informed. Why I would like to talk about more, because I'm directly engaged in these two campaigns, because we have several stakeholders, several partners. Not every partner is active in every single campaign. And first of all, we inform what we try to understand. We try to understand how can we actually produce a knowledge about Islam which could give a different perspective, a positive perspective, vis-a-vis the narratives of violent groups and extremists. Because usually the problem is, whenever we just tackle this problem, whenever you look at some websites or social media channels proposed by radical groups, usually you see they would like to monopolize this knowledge, saying that, let's give an example from Islam, this is Islam, you cannot think something different or diversely. In this extremely informed campaign, we try to give another perspective, saying that no, I mean, from experts who are established experts in their area, we try to understand their perspective, so the young people could learn about their religion from a different perspective. Extremely critical actually was, I would say, a little bit more difficult one, because in that campaign we collected the basic arguments of extremist groups, far right, religious extremists, etc., and we try to deconstruct them again with experts, with meetings, and with some examples in which we can prove that whatever they claim about their political agenda is something be deconstructed, and then just it's not credible anymore. I think there's a question, Karim.
Yes, Karim has a question.
Thank you. So, sir, I was just listening to your lecture. Thank you so much. So, I'm from Bangladesh. Actually, I was just wondering about this interfaith dialogue and the intra-religious dialogue, because I believe you have been working on this and you have been engaged also at the same time. So, it's a very good approach, we believe that. But as we understand that it's not actually in our hand. What you understand, there are lots of conflict among the religious group and among the different groups. So from your end, actually, I'm just surprised that is there any particular work that you have been engaged or you have done with the dialogue process that has bring a significant outcome actually? Is there any statistics or any example if you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you. It's a very difficult task actually. I had some also difficulties in that. I can give you an example. Okay, let me start. It's an inter-religious but related to intra-faith dialogue. Most of the time, for instance, I have difficulty to put together in my work Muslims with Baha'i community, because Baha'i religion is a different religion, but it has its roots also very important root in Islam. It's 200 years ago. It's started in Iran, in a Muslim majority country. And in this context, the method would be, and I just try to apply, it's better to start with, and also Muslims with other Muslims. Okay, it's the subcontinent context. I know it's a very delicate issue, but I also managed to put together with Sunni Muslims, with Ahmadi Muslims. It was not very easy, but the approach is this. It's not just starting with discussing theological differences or all the problems occurring, especially in Muslim majority countries vis-a-vis religious minorities. We start with a very basic human contact. It's important that people, first of all, discover that they are talking to another human person, and this human person has more or less the same desires, same feelings, same dreams, this instinct to survive, to love other people, and sometimes just hate other people in order, just if he or she is not just willing to, but all the traps that we are, and by our ideological, surroundings, etc. So especially we try to put together young people and also adult people, that they could just basically talk to each other. Progress is not always guaranteed, but my experience is people were at least not just satisfied that they first time put together, and of course other religions too. For instance, I'm in dialogue with different Jewish communities in Rome, and there are Orthodox Jewish communities, and who are sometimes not very interested to talk to more progressive communities, for instance, because they say they have serious theological questions and they could not agree on that. In these cases, it's better to create, moments and spaces, and people just, engage with each other. For instance, focusing on a common project or creating something which is, related to common good. Just discovering themselves not only as citizens, but also with their differences, even though they don't deny their religious differences, but they could just join their forces. And in this process, even though maybe we can just, some people say, oh, do you avoid? No, we don't avoid, differences, but, we maybe postpone the time to discuss the differences a bit further until we observe the necessary trust established between these human persons. And in this case, I had very good results, and especially young people from Muslim Baha'i communities come together and work together. And I organized some iftar dinners during Ramadan, in which also the Ahmadi Muslims were present. They joined and they also talked about experience, because it was sometimes a big discovery for some Muslims, hearing that these Ahmadi Muslims also do fast 30 days. They also don't drink and eat. I mean, since they don't know, of course, theological differences there are. No one denies their theological differences. They have a different approach about prophecy, etc. But on the other hand, the beauty of dialogue is there is a space to discover the common points. And then when they discover the common points, they don't cover the differences, they don't deny differences, but they say, okay, through these common points, we can create something good. for the whole society, for the community, for the neighborhood. But it is a long journey. Actually, I'm optimistic, but I'm not just expecting for every case, every context around the world, very quick results.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. There's another question, I guess. These projects are we engaging primarily with limiting erratic response from other groups towards the waves of extremism? And can we say some of the extremist sects are defensive response towards more violent extremism? Yes, for the first part, yes, more or less, yes. But it is just, the thing is, yeah, it's very difficult. We try to actually give a positive answer. Just, the problem is, we are not the first one just doing a similar work, But why we opted for focusing on more interreligious dialogue or just presenting examples that Muslims or people of different religions could come together? Because when you directly, we also studied these cases. When you directly oppose or criticize or attack, their approach, sometimes you help them out. It makes the thing is a bad advertisement. It works. You say, okay, they are saying this, but it's wrong. We tried in our project. I will just show you some examples. We tried to give examples which can give another perspective. But just let me give an example. I don't know whether I can share some video at the moment, if I'm allowed to do that. It's a question. Can I share my screen? Is it possible?
Yes, you can share it now.
Okay. Just now, in few seconds, I'll share with something that could maybe, and then I would like to. Okay, just while I'm preparing that, I will now show you an example directly from Rome. Meaning that this is a group of people who come together as young people. They come together and they form they just know each other from the years when they were studying music. They are from 3 different religions. And then we try to give an example of, because, it is normally we think that they are just starting, to push you into the violence. No, it's not starting like that. It's starting different levels. About music, for instance. Now they just, okay, whenever it's related to music, it's haram, it's forbidden. So, there are different levels of how do they engage you. And let me give you an example. They are Muslims, Christians, and Jews. They, let me, if I can just, okay, now I managed. And I would like to hear your comments about this experience. Very short, 4 minutes. Okay.
Cucini spesso: ma come vi siete conosciuti? Ma come fate a stare bene insieme? E la verità è che è venuto tutto talmente spontaneo, né mai è stato un problema. Mi fa ancora più piacere spiegarlo alle altre persone.
La mia idea è quella di superare le diversità attraverso la musica. Da qui ho creato questo gruppo fondato da musicisti appartenenti da diverse religioni, diversi paesi, e suoniamo musiche tradizionali di tutto il mondo.
L'incontro e il rispetto reciproco sono ciò che permette a progetti fatti da persone diverse di esistere e di arrivare nelle orecchie della gente come un messaggio di amicizia possibile.
Quando io sono sul palco, quando faccio concerti, quando suono, la gente sente solo il mio strumento, quello che esce dal mio cuore. A quel momento nessuno non pensa che io di dove sono, che religione o che musulmano, che cristiano. Le persone possono comunicare insieme con la musica, una cosa che esce dal cuore. Tutte le persone capiscono sicuramente questo messaggio di musica.
Abbiamo avuto il privilegio di suonare nell'album Alma Mater del Vaticano, vedendo un musulmano che suona sotto la voce del Papa non capita ogni giorno, e quindi è stata una bella lezione di vita, anche per le persone che hanno sentito la musica, ci ha fatto capire veramente tante cose.
La musica unisce popoli di culture e religioni diverse, mettendoci a confronto sugli aspetti che più ci riempiono la nostra vita.
La musica è stato un argomento per non allontanarci, anzi ci ha avvicinato e ci ha unito.
È un'opportunità veramente di crescita, ma anche di testimonianza al mondo della possibilità di amicizia e di supporto nel rispetto delle singole individualità. Uniti possiamo dare molto di più di quanto diamo quando siamo da soli. Quindi il mio messaggio è: uniamoci, non dividiamoci, impariamo l'uno dall'altro, arricchiamo le nostre esperienze con quello che non sappiamo, con le esperienze altrui, con le culture altrui, e rendiamoci migliori anche attraverso il nostro rapporto con gli altri.
Okay. I would love to really hear your comments, but let me give you some information, maybe just, to help you out a little bit. Maybe you can just say, okay, we can find everywhere, people who are musicians, who are different. But this group is a specific group. I have known them for many years. Whenever they, create some music, it has always this interfaith, interreligious taste. And as Mehdi, that guy that you said, who was talking about that, he said he, played with the Pope Benedict 2016, and that time he was not only over there as a musician and as a Muslim too, because people usually tend to, and if you remember, during the Pontificate Pope Benedict, there was several discussions about people were just not favoring Muslim Christian dialogue, and Pope Benedict made very important steps after Regensburg speech, and he invited many Muslim leaders into the Vatican, etc. And they do directly also religious music. And I don't know, are you familiar with, for instance, the other guy with beard? He was singing, he was saying the Adonai. Maybe you have seen that he was, indicated the heaven, because Adonai is a term for God in the Jewish tradition. They don't pronounce the proper name of the God. It's forbidden for their faith. So they use another term, Adonai, like Lord. And the thing is, these people just show, going around Italy, going around Europe. They also did a concert in Brussels, in different countries. They would like to share their experience directly as believers of three religions, but not only work together, but singing together to give another perspective about religion. Okay, I would like to give some information. I would love to hear your comments if you would like to comment and share, even just also your feelings. How did you find this video and related to the project, please?
I have a very positive impression on the video. If music can unite people, I think dialogue also can unite people around the world.
Thank you. I'm sorry, now I have seen about the volume. I'm sorry if you couldn't just hear it well, but you can just check it in YouTube wherever you want. Just I put it here in the chat box.
No, it was your voice actually, but it was just for a moment, a few seconds, and then it was improved. So no problem. We can hear you fine now. Pragya?
Yeah, I just have a question, two actually. One is that in this video, were there also like non-religious people or atheist people there? And secondly, in your opinion, when you've done your field work, have you noticed that are younger people slightly more prone to dialogue than the older ones, or is it just a myth that we believe? And yeah, what are the things that people usually connect on? So these are the things that just are on top of my mind.
Okay, thank you. Actually, in the video, most of the people are believers, but I'm not mentioning directly because there's something private. They don't want to make it public. One of the musicians actually is not a believer, but he lives his religion as I said. He's just one of the male one. His religion is a cultural experience, he told me, and actually he asked me whether it is suitable that he will be part of this video. I said, on the contrary, it will be, because I see several also people, not for this project only. The idea of project is not bring together people who are believing or people who belong to Abrahamic faiths. Just it's a call to everyone, every human person, every person of goodwill who would like to overcome the extremisms together. So since unfortunately most of the extremisms are at this moment are related to religious traditions, or for misunderstanding them or abuse them, or different interpretations of them, and there are also several people in our project and engaging with our project, but also out of this project in my work experience, everyday experience, I see many people who are agnostic, atheists, not interested very much in religion, but they're interested in social cohesion, in promoting interfaith understanding, so that the society could become a more peaceful and sustainable society for the peace that we would like to realize in society. For the second part of the question, yeah, younger people, I mean, it depends. Sometimes young people, it depends. For some occasions, they are more interested. It depends on which university are they attending, which department, their readings. But there are some cases also, I see that's why, for instance, this year, I'm part of the Religions for Peace as an international NGO for promoting understanding among religions. This year, I could not go to Germany for the meeting, but I attended actively from home, from Rome. And the subtitle of this year was Dialogue between Generations. I mean, generations in dialogue. Here, of course, I observe in some occasions there are so many elderly people, some of the younger people, but more fruitful meetings are usually happening when the enthusiasm and the curiosity of younger people could meet the experience of elder people, the knowledge of elder people, and it could just really, create. Universities are very good examples. Universities put together like a professor of 70 years old with 20 years old, students. So, but dialogue meetings also create, and sometimes it creates more, I will say, egalitarian environments, because in universities, it depends, of course, on the professors, but usually there is this sort of, power hierarchy. You're the professor, you grade them, and you talk, with an authority necessarily, because you're teaching something important, whatsoever. But yeah, that's just my observation. I think there's a question, but question, it's coming direct message. Can I read the direct message?
Yes, but I think you addressed that question. It was by Pragya. She asked it. Now Furkan wants to ask a question.
Okay, please, Furkan.
I actually wanted to share my reflection. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your presentation. It was actually very inspirational, and I'm having already here a couple of projects with Protestants and the Catholics, like association. But I definitely need to have also some connections with the Jewish and also the Hinduism and the Buddhism, like you already mentioned. We don't have that much people from Hinduism and Buddhism and also Jewish people in Slovenia, but I really want to contact with them as well. And your video actually was really good idea to find people and meet with them in an atmosphere we can all listen music and do music, and that's why I thought it's very inspirational. Thank you for sharing. I will definitely listen it again, and also will search other videos from the EU United, right? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, before reading and answering the questions that arrived to provide messages, let me give an example. Okay, I have been in dialogue with different Hindu communities in Italy for many years now, and as I had the privilege to meet an important guru from India some years ago, and he just honored me with a ceremony here for my work in interfaith dialogue. But I remember which really triggered me about getting more engaged with the Hindu community. It was many years ago. I was invited to talk in an interfaith meeting in a church, and they told me, before we start, we will have a musical moment prepared by the Hindu community. It's a musical, I mean, with music, but it's the holy, sacred moment. And it really captured me. I mean, I was so much, into that. Normally, I'm not the guy who is just, recording these moments and just sharing everywhere. It was a very important, and I said, okay, I have to really understand better, this connection between the Hindu spirituality and the music. And just, this is my personal experience, actually. When I just heard of this music, and then just the mantras which are repeated by them, in that moment, just opened many aspects for me, to engage more and more in dialogue with the Hindu community. Okay, I'm reading this question. I believe that media is instrumental in creating the violent image, so there will be a better impact on people if Muslims take a media more, such as creating YouTube videos where Islam is not mainly the topic, but other things such as charity work or other team, but was carrying out that team, we should part of Islam. Yes, I think it will make the Islamic practice more normalized among people. I have seen that many YouTubers who make videos on different teams use words mashallah, inshallah, which may become rumors, but not others. But I could see people from diverse faith picked it up. It became normalized to some extent. These small things make a big impact in the long term. Just my opinion. Okay, thank you, Sabah, for your observation. I will generalize it for different religious communities. Yes, there is sort of a jargon that we use, within. That's why I ask you, whether you are familiar with the word Adonai that the Jewish singer was saying, for instance. This was inshallah, mashallah, or namaste. I encourage every human person belongs to a different religion. It's just it's not a propaganda. Just in YouTube, if they just share, especially young people, their daily life, if they just actually we call like storytelling, if they just if they start telling stories about their daily human experience, in which their faith plays an important role to them, I think it will be very important. I like the word normalize. Sometimes in the sociological literature, we don't like very much the normalizing. But yeah, it becomes more familiar. I agree with that, because usually the social media people are more interested in hearing personal stories, not too much theoretical or the historical accounts. They are also necessary sometimes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's why. Thank you very much, Sabah, for your. Do I pronounce correct your name? I don't know, Sabah.
Sabah. Sabah. Yes, sir. You're right.
Okay, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
And okay, if you have any observation for this video, I would love to hear that. Otherwise, I would like to show you another video that was extremely informed campaign. Another video I would like to show you from the extremely critical campaign. But if you like, we have still some time or for the last comment or observation for the video about the musical group. Otherwise, I will move to the second. Okay, let me just about. If you have any problems about the voice, please let me know. I make it at the beginning. Okay. Now we will hear two Muslim professors who were not born in Italy, but did their academic career in Italy. They are teaching in Italy, both of them professors of Islamic studies. And they talk about the relation between the topic I just discovered, they covered a little bit, the relation between two types of extremisms, the far right and the religious extremism. Okay.
Sai, Yusuf, nella retorica occidentalocentrica, la liaison tra l'Islam europeo e le giovani generazioni musulmane, evoca alla mente non pochi stigmi, pregiudizi, paure e sentimenti contrastanti. Specie nell'ultimo ventennio, naturalmente l'attacco terroristico alle due torri dell'11 settembre è stato un tournant, uno spartiacque che ha segnato profondamente la storia contemporanea. Poi 2004 l'attentato a Madrid, Berlino, Bruxelles, Parigi, Istanbul, tutti attentati terroristici vili che in questo ventennio sono stati quasi tutti commessi da giovani musulmani, quindi da figli o nipoti dei primi migranti musulmani in Europa.
Sì, purtroppo dopo l'11 settembre l'Islam è stato identificato con la violenza e il terrorismo. E così un teologo musulmano, quando viene invitato per una conferenza o un dibattito, si sente un po' imbarazzato perché deve sempre difendersi, deve sempre dire no, non è vero, la nostra religione è una religione di pace, in modo ripetitivo, anche noioso, e questo è un po' umiliante, direi, perché l'opinione pubblica è cambiata. E questo ha creato tensioni, nuove tensioni che non c'erano prima. E questo ha creato anche una polarizzazione. Da un lato c'è il populismo, l'estrema destra, che trova nell'Islam un nemico globale che deve lottare e poi per avere più voti investe nella paura continuamente, approfitta di questo dramma del terrorismo per guadagnare voti e salire al potere. Dall'altro lato, questa frustrazione e umiliazione ha incoraggiato purtroppo alcuni giovani musulmani che sono sentiti forse marginalizzati, oppure per tanti motivi, perché non si può generalizzare, a cadere nella trappola del terrorismo, di una ideologia bellica, pericolosa e antireligiosa per natura, nonostante che usa un linguaggio religioso.
Credo ci voglia oggi, e la letteratura, la bibliografia inizia a essere molto ricca sul tema, ma soprattutto questi due estremi. Ecco, questo è un aspetto direi molto importante. Questa percezione pubblica e mediatica, i media hanno un ruolo molto importante, a volte sono approssimativi, a volte l'informazione è volutamente indotta o politicamente indotta, a volte è frettolosa senza avere necessariamente una volontà politica di dipingere male i musulmani. Questi due estremi provocano una terza questione importante, quella di omettere di raccontare o di trascurare tutto quel retroterra vasto, maggioritario dei giovani musulmani d'Europa, che sono un grande valore aggiunto. Sapete, nei social e nei periodi di decadimento culturale, e purtroppo oggi si legge molto poco, non solo in Italia, in ogni dove, nel mondo musulmano, in Italia, le persone leggono poco più di un libro, 2 libri all'anno, chi legge. E siamo, dico siamo perché sono musulmano anch'io, figli, adepti, seguaci, fedeli di una religione che ha per centralità il sapere, la conoscenza. Tu lo sai, la prima parola del testo coranico, il Corano è il libro di riferimento della fede islamica, della civiltà islamica, inizia con un bellissimo verbo all'imperativo. A mio parere è uno dei più bei verbi che ci siano. In arabo dice iqra, verbo imperativo, leggi. Poi Allah parlerà nei 114 capitoli del libro sacro, parlerà di amore, parlerà di fratellanza, parlerà di tolleranza, parlerà di reciprocità, ma prima di tutto questo ha raccomandato il sapere.
Si parla dell'Islam europeo, ma questo è ancora in Italia un fenomeno recente, non c'è ancora un'intesa con lo Stato italiano. Cosa significa questo? Significa che a scuola non c'è una formazione religiosa, significa nei carceri per i detenuti non c'è nessuno che può seguire i detenuti e evitare la radicalizzazione. Significa che c'è un grande voto giuridico e poi ci lamentiamo perché c'è la radicalizzazione. Perché c'è questo voto proprio, perché non c'è nessuno preparato nel posto giusto per aiutare le persone, aiutare i giovani a non cadere in questa trappola.
Dice, l'Islam è una civiltà. Ridurre l'Islam a solo una religione che consiste nel halal e nel haram, nel lecito e nell'illecito, o il pregare il 5 volte al giorno, sono tutte cose importanti, attenzione, sono i pilastri, i cardini su cui poggia la religione islamica. Ma la religione islamica non è solo ritualità, la religione islamica è una civiltà, con la sua letteratura, con la sua filosofia, con la sua mistica, con il suo sufismo, con la sua musica. Noi dobbiamo valorizzare, auspicabilmente, mi rivolgo ai giovani, parlano un ottimo italiano, spesso migliore del mio, sono nati e cresciuti qua, io l'italiano l'ho imparato a 20 anni, sono integrati, inseriti, chiamiamoli come vogliamo, nel tessuto sociale italiano, sanno comunicare, comunichiamo meno l'aspetto devozionale della religione è personale. Non possiamo spiegare un fenomeno scientifico con Masha Allah. Va bene, Masha Allah, perché lui è il creatore dell'universo, quindi fa delle cose meravigliose che la mente umana e la scienza non riesce a spiegare. Detto questo, spieghiamo che questo è un obbligo nell'Islam, conoscere perché quell'albero d'autunno fa cadere le foglie e in primavera fiorisce.
La laicità dello Stato è necessaria per la democrazia. Dunque non c'è una vera democrazia senza Stato laico. Ma direi anche la religione ha bisogno di laicità, perché la laicità permette l'uguaglianza e la libertà, e senza libertà non si può pensare ad una religiosità equilibrata, sana. Lo spazio laico dovrebbe essere e potrebbe essere uno spazio di crescita spirituale e religiosa. Ma purtroppo c'è un certo concetto, una certa comprensione della laicità che esclude la religione, e questo crea un voto valoriale. E quando abbiamo bisogno della religione non la troviamo, perché è già stata esclusa e marginalizzata. E dunque dobbiamo ritrovare una nuova formula che permette alle religioni in forma istituzionale, ma anche pensatori, intellettuali, associazioni, eccetera, di contribuire in modo positivo a questo cambiamento, all'educazione.
L'islamismo è una politica di destra, di ultradestra, esclusiva, escludente, che rifiuta la pluralità, che rifiuta la diversità, tutto quello che non corrisponde alla loro opinione, spesso ideologica, per loro è sbagliato.
La prima cosa da fare davanti agli estremisti di destra è di non reagire con la violenza, oppure con la polemica, la violenza verbale o la violenza fisica. Non rispondere alla provocazione. Dunque, quando vediamo una persona arrabbiata oppure una persona che ha pregiudizi contro l'Islam, contro i musulmani, o parla in modo aggressivo, la nostra reazione deve essere pacifica. Questo cambia la conversazione, cambia il discorso e spinge comunque la persona a ripensare a perché questa persona musulmana non reagisce in modo violento. Se l'Islam è violenza, dunque tutti i musulmani devono reagire alla provocazione con la violenza. Questo è il primo passo da fare, è pacificare e ritrovare la razionalità del discorso, uscire dall'emozione, dalle reazioni, perché talvolta siamo spinti a reagire in una certa maniera che serve solamente il discorso dell'odio, e questo è negativo. E poi l'amicizia, la gratuità dell'amicizia, lavoro sociale, parlare con la gente, perché sicuramente tanta gente, tanti giovani non hanno avuto amici musulmani, oppure hanno incontrato le persone sbagliate, che hanno confermato i pregiudizi. Dunque un lavoro continuo, quotidiano, di dialogo, di apertura, anche in silenzio. Dunque non significa parlare per forza, anche in modo lavorare insieme, essere vicini, buoni e collaborativi, soprattutto in tempi di crisi, di pandemia, e questo può cambiare le cose in modo graduale, lento, ma alla fine ha dei frutti positivi.
Okay, it was a little bit longer. Sorry about that, but just I think we have still some 8 minutes to listen to your comments, responses. And it was, of course, the first one is a little bit lighter. This is a little bit more loaded with more, I would say, conceptualizations. But the floor is yours. I would love to hear your comments, responses about the video.
Yes, Furkan.
Yes, I would like to share a funny comment, but it's also a good one. I don't speak Italian. I don't know a lot of words from Italian, but if I would give a summary, like a short summary of this video, it says parlare, right? This means speak. Yeah.
But you haven't seen the subtitles.
Yeah, I saw the subtitle,
Okay,
but
okay.
I was making a joke actually, but it was also the essence of the video. Like these two professors, like they were speaking and they were just I was also listening their Italian accents and also the words and checking my words, you know, like a vocabulary in Italian. And one of the best word is like parlare, like to speak. And the essence and the summary of the video is like to speak, like to have a dialogue. You know, this critical thinking is always actually, the prejudices always can be actually destroyed with the speaking with the individual, that we are actually having a prejudices. And that's why I was just giving a funny example that they always in every sentences just they were just repeating the speak, parlare.
Thank you, Furkan.
Charu?
Yes, so the video is really amazing and quite, like, it taught me quite a lot about different things that how younger generation can lead to extremism. However, I have a doubt. I would say that though the professors talk about incorporating religion as maybe a subject in the curriculum, in school curriculum, and incorporating it within the definition of being secular. I just wanted to say that we all live in different countries, right? So obviously every educational institute would have different children coming from different religion. So should we, and every country has a different government, which might be inclined towards one aspect. So won't you think that if we include religious study in a particular way in school curriculum, or maybe, you know, in terminology of secularism, won't that be affected or influenced by the type of government or by the type of institution we have at the power level?
Thank you. Thank you. I actually expected this question, and thank you very much, because they talk about for the Italian context. I should, you know, clarify something. In Italy, we don't have any obligatory religious education in the schools. Just there is a called Hour of Religion, in which mostly Catholic religion is taught, but it is not obligatory. Just the parents, and then if they grow up, the students do decide whether they take this class or not. Professor Mokrani was talking about something very Italian problem, actually. In Italy, religious communities other than Catholic communities should stipulate an agreement with the Italian state according to Italian constitution if they would like to be recognized as a religious community. What does it mean, this recognition? They could, organize their own courses, and it would be totally within the legal framework. They could raise their chaplains, religious ministries for prisons, for the schools, if it is necessary, for the hospitals. And there is, we call in Italy as church tax. If you are part of the Catholic Church, or if your religious community is recognized, a small portion of your annual income is taken by the state, is given to your religious community so that they can use it for religious services. This is something very particular for Italy and also for Germany. And here, the idea what he is trying to put together with the secular state is, of course, as he mentioned, a democracy, the state should be secular. But as you have mentioned, in each state, in each government, there is a different way of how they manage the religious minorities. This is the Italian way. Since the Muslims do not have this recognition, they don't have this agreement, the space is totally open also for also abuses. Since the Muslims don't have the recognition, they don't have the mosque as recognized a place of worship officially. Imams are not recognized officially. So someone comes, I don't know, from a Muslim country, and we don't have any regulation on that, and he says he's an imam or he's a religious ministry, and whatever he teaches, we have no idea, for instance. And that's why his request was, if Muslims could be recognized as a religious community, they could have the access to the rights, their rights to be, to exercise their religion within this constitutional context. And that is part of the so-called the Italian secularism, in which the religious freedom is exercised through this Article 8 of the Constitution.
Arokia?
In their conversation, it was said that religion needs secularization. Mm-hmm. And I don't really agree with that, because the secularization can be also limiting the growth of religions. So how can we really reconcile this expression of religion needs secularization?
Mm-hmm. We have very limited time. We need not only another hour, but we need the whole year for this, because let me very briefly clarify. Secularization, he didn't use, even the translation did not use the secularization. Secularization is the sociological process in which religion becomes less and less relevant in the society. He uses secularism, but it was also not the best translation. We use in Italian laicità. It is used like similar, sounds similar, like laïcité in French, laïclik in Turkish. But what we mean laicità is the distinction between political and religious spheres, meaning that in Italian case, laicità means not only the state is protected from religious sphere, no, also religious communities are protected from the state intervention. I mean, this is like because it is a huge topic in each country, and the former comment was very helping out. In each country, we have a different way of dealing with religion and politics. In the Italian case, what he was saying, laicità, meaning that religious communities are not only expected not to intervene in the political affairs, but the political sphere, the state, is also prevented to intervene within the religious community. So it is a balanced relation. In one sentence, I will say, that idea of laicita, secularism, not secularization, that idea of secularism requires at the beginning full recognition of a right to religious freedom. Without the full recognition of right to religious freedom of each citizen, each resident in a political context, secularism could create different harms and unnecessary interventions within the religious communities. Yeah, that's why if I understand your argument, yes, I agree with you, but he wanted to explain, because I know your questions and comments are very valid, because they were talking about the different political context, Italian context, and for India, for France, we can make different assessments using the same terms, of course.
Okay, we have run out of time, but okay. Furkan raised a hand now. Furkan, do you want to say something?
Yeah, very quick question. Actually, it was a nice comment about the laicita, and I was just planning to ask if you are saying the laicita, also the secularism, actually make the religion sustainable in the country. Like without it, actually religion can be, disappear, but in a way that you actually made a comment, you are actually making it sustainable for everyone. If someone would like to have an information about religion or want to believe in a religion, this is also like what you're saying, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, actually, when we talk about laicity or secularism, not just terms, but we define them correctly, ideally. In a democratic society, laicite actually guarantees the basic rights and freedoms, not only the right to religious freedom. Because laicite means the state, or laicità in Italian, state does not take a position vis-a-vis any religious community. The state only applies the constitution of the country. And as you know, in every democracy, the constitution recognizes every citizen equal, and they have equal rights and freedoms. And if the state does not respect the rule of distinction between religion and politics, and if the state does prefer, in most of the cases, the religion of the majority for her decisions, political decisions, also that could create not only conflictual agenda, but also it could violate the constitution of the country, because then the idea of treating all citizens equally could have a big harm. Actually, that's the idea of laicite. And but the thing is, laicita or secularism could create a space for religions in which they can, the term of sustainability, they could just use their own resources to grow and to reflect upon what they are actually doing, but not just religion imposes, but just one thing, again, the constitutional thing, just I'm finishing with that. That doesn't mean states or some political institutions do not have any responsibility if a human person or a citizen is persecuted or violated within his or her community, because then again there's a problem of the basic rights and freedoms. Religious freedom is a basic right, but also there are several other basic rights which are connected with religious freedom. And of course, the constitutional institutions also have the responsibility to help out, to assist citizens if they find themselves in situations in which they are oppressed by the religious community, if they are marginalized by the religious community. This aspect also is part of the secularism. I mean, then the political institutions have a responsibility also in that matter.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. With this, we come to the end of our session today. Thank you so much, Dr. Aydin, for your time and for this very informative presentation. Thank you all for your questions and feedback. I'll see you next week. Thank you once again, Dr. Aydin.
Thank you. I kindly ask you to look at the website of the project and the YouTube page. I'm also sorry. If you just would like to, watch other videos and share them with your friends and colleagues, we will be very happy. Especially, I make a spoiler. I kindly ask you to see another one about this young woman going around Spain for, if you haven't seen that, for peaceful coexistence. I think you will love it. It was a very nice video.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I'm reading for your thanks. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you in another occasion. Thank you very much.